Good afternoon and welcome to Safety and Health Expo Connect 2021. This is the second of 5 live webinars, one taking place each day this week. My name's Ian Hart, I'm the editor of SHP. If you've missed any of the other live sessions from the last couple of days of Safety and Health Expo and the Workplace Wellbeing Show Connect, don't worry, they're all available on demand within the platform and you can view them up until the end of July. In this session, sponsored by EcoOnline, we're going to delve into the history of gamification to explore the latest digital tools that can help engage everyone and ask the question, is there a role for gamification in EHS reporting? I'm delighted to be joined by Rob Leech, the Principal Product Director at EcoOnline. And there's going to be an opportunity for you to put your questions to Rob during the session. So please do check out the top right-hand corner of your widget where you're watching the session today, and you'll see a Q&A box in the corner there. And please pop your questions in there as they come to you, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. Rob, great to see you. How have you been?
Hi, Ian. All good. Thank you, sir. All good.
Excellent stuff. Do you want to start by briefly introducing yourself and your role at EcoOnline and then get going with the presentation when you're ready, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, Ian. So hi, everybody. Rob Leech, Principal Development Director of EcoOnline. Forgive my Scouse accent. I talk quick. We've only got 45 minutes. We'll get through a lot, so buckle up, everybody. My sort of background, always been IT, but always in sort of specialty chemicals originally, many years in that sort of background. So health and safety was in my DNA just by being involved in that sector. And for the last sort of 20 years, been involved in our product, which we called EHS Pro and Enterprise, which are two variations of our offering for health and safety management systems. So it's an integrated cloud-based offering to help you manage your safe systems of work right the way through your organization. If you're interested, I'm not here to sell. Obviously I am, but no, please contact us afterwards and we can have a chat about that. As Ian said, it's about gamification today and change behavior reducing risks. So I'm just going to give you a quick agenda, really, just to set the sort of the goals out of my presentation. I'm going to talk about what gamification is, just a high level definition of it, really, to make sure I set the foundations out there. Then we'll talk about the mechanics. What pieces could you possibly use to put gamification in your systems, and I'll talk about which type of systems and safe systems of work. We'll talk about a few examples, and at the end, if we've got time, I'll talk about 2 or 3 different ways you could leverage this straight away. You might already be doing some of them and not know, but you could leverage the concept of gamification in your systems. Now, I always like to start presentations with sort of just talking about, I appreciate everybody on this call is possibly from a different sector, a different industry. You know, you might be working in a cab, outside, in a factory, working in full PPE. You know, I appreciate that. Your different environments, different activities. I'm not suggesting gamification works everywhere, okay? That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's a silver bullet to solve your problems, but I am conscious that if you're aware of its potential and its leverages, how you could leverage it, then maybe in certain roles, areas, and sectors, it could be useful to you. So I am mindful that, you know, you're all different. We might all share some of the same hazards and risks, but we are different in nature as companies. You know, I spoke to Ian before, you know, SHP have got lots and lots of clients consuming content and working with them, all from different areas, all from different sectors. I'm sure Ian could name 100 different companies in each of these sectors, all with sort of different spins on health and safety that they need. And not only just that, and I'll get into gamification in a second, it's also important about the personas and the culture. So we've got sort of on this slide, it says safe systems of work. And by that, I mean anything you do. And I'm using a very broad definition, you know, whether it's your induction process or your permitting process or your isolation process. But I also include things like your environmental reporting, incident reporting, auditing. To me, they're all fall under my generic term of safe systems of work. You've got lots of them. Some might be paper. Most of them might be computerized. Some might be in Excel. You've got power users who are using those systems every day. They've been trained. They know how to use them. Then you've got more daily users who has a different persona, different culture. They may be just doing them to close things out or to move things along or to report data. And then near the other side of this diagram, you've got when required. People who maybe are working on the factory or out in the field or delivering services or driving something, you know, they're not always got access to your systems. They might even have an email address from your company. And then you've got your fringe type users. I don't know why they push a wheelbarrow. I say that all the time. I don't know why the designer said fringe users. push a wheelbarrow and power users wear a hard hat with a briefcase. But your fringe users are the people on the edge, you know, non-users, I call them, people who, you know, a contractor, a field service person who comes into your business and goes out your business. They all need to interact with your safe systems of work. But the reason I put this slide up is, again, gamification will be different from each of those people. Someone who's using a screen or a particular system every day maybe doesn't need everything gamified on it, whereas somebody who uses it maybe once a week, gamification might really help them in a certain way. So you have to be very careful how you gamify different environments and activities, but also the different roles for people. And I think the question I usually ask if I'm with people now is what is gamification? It'd be a bit mute today, I wouldn't get any response, but the key thing it is a neologism, which is easy for this Scouser to say. So Ian, if you're still there, do you know what a neologism is?
I don't know, no, go for it.
All right, so well, I had to look it up in a dictionary. There's another surprise, a Scouser that can read, obviously, yes. But no, a neologism is basically a newly coined word or expression. So your continual professional development, you can tick it now because you've learned something, what that word is. Gamification is a newly coined word. It's only been out the last sort of 10, 15 years. It is a new type of word to bring things together for gaming mechanics. But I'm going to reverse the stone straight away and say what it isn't. I think gamification, if I say what it's not before I tell you what it is, it makes it a little easier. It's not about playing a game. It's not about turning something into a game. That's not what gamification means. And it particularly doesn't mean trivializing or making things fun, or that's not what gamification all about. You know, it is really serious because it doesn't change your activities. You know, I'm not saying you play your permit to work arcade game to get your authority to work. That's not what we're suggesting. It's none of that at all.
It's quite interesting that, because I think a lot of people would assume, wouldn't it, that it would all be about making things more game-like. So it's quite interesting to kind of hear you explain it like that.
And I think it's his biggest barrier, why it can be written off very quickly. And I think you're right. People think of, how can I gamify such an important safety system or task or process? Safety and games don't go in the same light ever. You can't trivialize anything. And you're right, it's not about that. It's all about, actually, the purpose of gamification is using the mechanics that came from game playing and online game playing, but you're using them in non-game applications. Okay, so its source and its actual history does come from gameplay, but it's using the mechanics of that in other, you know, in your observation program, in your action closeout, in your toolbox talks. It's using those things, those processes. You gamify those with mechanics to try and improve people's motivation, engagement, commitment, you know, to get people to do those things they should be doing daily, but it changes their behavior to be more motivated to do them. That's what using and I'll talk about what are the gameplay mechanics in a second. And I think the last point, or we'll come back to this again, I think, Ian, it's about driving your business objectives. So if you've got a safety objective to reduce, lost time accidents by a certain percent, or downtime from accidents by a certain percent, you're probably already recording all the data you need to try and gamify those objectives. I bet you're already recording the information you need now. And that's what it means by driving those objectives through the data. I'm going to prove to you you've probably already recorded some of the data you need to actually use gamification. The mechanics themselves are relatively simple. A gamification mechanics is something like giving someone recognition at the end of a task, giving someone a reward about achieving something, but also giving them a challenge or competition to say that, you know, you're best at doing this, or you're nearly achieving the best rating at this. They are all the mechanics, and they don't all work every time, but they're all the mechanics of gameplay. It takes out those things about recognition, rewards, challenges, and it tries to put them in other non-gameplay scenarios to try and boast of those things.
So you touched on a few of them there, but what do you think the real benefits are of gamification?
I think it's commitment in the EHS space or the QC space. I think it's commitment and motivation. They're the key things. And I know learning and on-the-job doing it is a key thing that can be used. But I think to boil it right down, I think it is that motivation. You get people engaged in doing things, changes their behavior to without them knowing it, they're doing it more and more and more because of the gamification, and they're getting committed to it. You're changing their behavior to just do this because they're getting recognition, or they're getting a reward, or the competitive nature of someone is driving them to do this. I think that's the key in it, is that motivation. And we will touch on that a little bit later as well. I think the popular approaches are very simple. It is about awarding points. You know, I've got to do this thing by then. If I do it by then, I'll score a point. And at the end of a week, I'll see how many points I've scored, and I'll see how I'm doing within my department or my site, or a milestone. You know, if you get so many of these things done by a certain time, the recognition is you've hit this milestone. The recognition is you're now referred to as a master observer or a senior auditor. You know, simple things like that. I know competition is a key one, but other things are competition. You know, you could have competition about where the safest places is a difficult one to have competition around, but you can have about who's actually observing the most things in an area and rank that and do competition against that. But even internally about, you know, one of our clients, I know it can be seen as old hat, but they really push near miss reporting, and they're trying to gamify some of their near miss reporting. It's a dangerous one to tackle, first of all, and we'll talk about the risks later, because you've got to be mindful of you getting quality data. So I'm sure people on the call are thinking, yeah, but if we gamify stuff just for reward, how's the quality? There's ways to manage that, and we can talk about that as we go through this. But these are the types of things about point scoring, leaderboards, badges. Notifications is a key one, I always think, on this little slide.
Can a company mix and match the types of gaming mechanics that they have, or their rules about kind of what areas work best, such as by industry or function?
No real rules, absolutely not. You know, I think it is a really deep question, that, because I think you've got to look at the culture of your organization right the way through it. I think you also need to look at the environments. You know, do people can they get their hands on the computer? Can their job, does their role allow them to engage in the gamification you've added to reporting near misses, or closing actions out on time, or getting your audits with no non-compliances? You need to make sure, you know, that it's all consuming, so it's fair. And I think that's a key word to do with gamification. But also that it's really communicated well. I don't think there's any link to sort of the individual industries that works well. I think a key point is don't use them all. You know, start simple. Start with a very, very simple point scoring system with a recognition or a social reward. One of our clients has always done some book vouchers at the end of a month for their best observer. And I'm sure people on the call have already done that, but it's just expanding that concepts. You know, like I say, if I'm in a cab every day and I can't get involved in it, well, then make sure the gamification isn't aimed at, you know, just focusing on people in cabs when they can't engage. You need to be mindful of the environment and their role. There's no strict rules. I think the key one is start small. I think, Ian, start small with maybe sort of, you know, a pilot or a prototype. And I think that the key one it works is you cherry pick one of these. Well, just do point scoring attached to this particular activity. Observations is an easy one. And then you will see, or you need to track, does it motivate? Does it engage? Does it commit people? You know, that's the key thing. It's tracking actually of what we've done and put in place. Has it worked? I think that's a key thing. You need to fail fast and change and fix quick. That's the old adage. And it's the same in this. If you don't think it's working, you need to be mindful and tweak it as you go.
I guess you've got to be mindful about the individual as well, about what kind of works for each individual and what doesn't work for certain other ones.
I think that's a key point. Yeah, I think, you know, some people don't like competition, turns them off. I'm not getting involved in that. That's competition. Why should I get involved in that? Absolutely. I think you need to be mindful of that. But I think that's the key bit with the feedback bit. If you get gamification out there on a particular process to try and help close out, allow people to say, I don't want to be involved in this, but I'm happy to be involved in an individual performance type one. So you get engagement commitments to tell the individual, you know, you're very close to achieving this. You know, you're nearly the top ranking person. So you don't share competition, but you drive it an individual performance by personalization. And I think later on, we'll talk about some of these. I bet you most people on this call are already doing that with various fitness apps and things like that. So you do need to run. It doesn't work for all. There are scientific research done, a lot of it from gaming, but some of it from health and safety as well, about what type of people does it really work for and doesn't. But the key thing is, even if it doesn't work for 5% of your particular catchment area, as long as it doesn't make them less safe, or more at risk, then you would do it because you're 80% benefiting from it. I think the key bit is whatever you put in doesn't make things sort of worse, as it were. I think the key thing is that feedback loop. Allow people to say, let me don't get me in the league table. I'd rather just get personal information on notifications to me. So it is a key. That persona thing right at the beginning is a key thing about who it works for and who it doesn't. I think just some history now, changing tacks a little bit, just to show you who else has done this. It is an old practice. It really is, even though it's a new concept. You know, gamification is a new word, a neologism, but actually it's been going for forever, I was going to say hundreds of years. It's not quite that, but, Green Shield stamps. Ian, I don't think you're old enough to remember Green Shield stamps. I'm sure you're not, but I do remember them knocking around the house. I do remember Green Shield stamps being around the house and my mum collecting them. I'm not sure anything ever was bought by them, but there was a marketing technique to boost loyalty. If you collected these badges, stuck them in a book, you benefited from it. Now, I know that's retail, but it did boost loyalty and commitment. Do you remember them, Ian? Do you remember these stamps?
No, not really. No, I kind of know that they're vaguely to do with kind of customer sales and reward scheme type of thing, but no, I don't really.
The SO tokens were another one I do remember. Those sort of things. Not that we ever bought them. I think we got 4 glasses and I broke one of them within a week, and that was disastrous. You know what I mean? Something like that. But I think another really good one is the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. And I'm not excluding beavers and badgers and brownies and all the others. I'm not. But those organizations really, really do, I think, excel at gamification. Their badge process is all about gamifying to get people engaged and achieve things and be proud and be motivated. And the key thing with this one we should all learn from, it's all consuming. There's badges for sport. If you're good at sport, there's badges for making food. There's badges for craft. There's badges for looking after pets or people. There's badges for hiking. It's all consuming. They don't exclude anybody, age, academic abilities, and all badges are seen the same. It really is a good sort of ideology they've got about gamification. They don't call it gamification, it's your badges. And I remember Woggle being a 6er and an armful of badges. I loved it. It did get commitment and engagement. I think the last one is really, more commercialized. The airlines themselves, they've always done this, haven't they? Buy this, get some air miles, do a cheap one. Again, it is just to get more commitment, albeit, again, I appreciate that more for commercialization of buying something, but it does boost loyalty. These things do work. They're proven to work.
There are a couple of kind of historic examples there, and there's a couple of questions coming around it. Obviously, the Air Miles is a little bit more recent, but have you got any examples of more kind of modern gamification apps and any examples of where this has really worked well?
Yeah, and I think the key one, we'll get onto health and e-learning in a second. I think that's the next bit. But there are others. When I was looking around, there's things like a job application. They gamify you. Now they want you to apply for the job, so they gamify the process. But some of the strange ones were litter picking. I saw an app that was gamifying litter picking to make you pick up litter. Wildlife spotting. I know my brother-in-law joined the, I'm going to say RNLI then, but no, the Royal Birds Society, to say which type of birds were in his garden, and the whole family do it, and you gain points and you gain a credit. They've gamified that, wildlife spotting. And the strangest one was tea collecting. I saw a gamified app on tea collecting. Now, really, if you're into tea collecting, I don't think you need any more motivating, do you? You're either into that or you're not. But they have got, gamification is here. And I'm not saying it works all the time. That's not what I'm preaching. But it is out there. It is in mainstreaming now. I think there are some weird and wonderful apps out there. I think the key one for me is the health stuff, though. This is a key one. If you've got a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or those bicycles you're in the front room and you're cycling against a whole group of people around the world, I think these things do engage you. They do make you change your behavior to be self-coaching, and they objectivize or data visualization. They put it in your face. It's the great one. There's the Fitbit. It's tracked how many steps you've done, but it still sends you a personal message to get more out of your behavior. You're nearly at your target. You're going to achieve my watch continually tells me when I'm walking, wow, this is the second goodest walk you've done this week. It just changes my behavior to think about that data.
Yeah, I know. I used to have I occasionally use a kind of calorie counting app, and I hate eating healthily and all that stuff, but I'm really competitive. And I know that, oh, hold on a minute, there's a Mars bar on the side, but if you eat that, I'm going to go over my calorie counting for the day. So, you're right, it absolutely works. So would you say that's kind of true gamification in its truest form?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, the way I look at gamification, absolutely. I think this is the ultimate example. You get personalized information just for you to change your behavior, or you can pair your watch with someone else. I paired one of my other developers years ago, Craig, and he walks about 5 billion miles a day. I felt it was the worst thing I ever did, because when I looked, it was always you're 4 years behind Craig in the steps you've done. But actually, it was still interesting to me. It still motivated me to try and get closer to him. And I think this type of stuff is the perfect one, whether you don't want to share stuff, it's all personal messages, or you share with a friend or a group of friends to see how you're performing, or you join those bicycles where you've got 500 people around the world all cycling on a course together. I think this is the ultimate one. This Ian, and also the next one is e-learning, which is a key one for me. We've all done e-learning courses where you've got quizzes and tests and things like that. And they are all the gamifying of it. We do one internally where we have to sit security tests, a training session and tests every month. Everyone in the business has to do it, because we're in essence a software house. We didn't realize that actually 2 of the departments were actually challenging each other constantly on the leaderboard. I never looked personally, but when I knew it was there, I always started to look. And the development and the sales team were always trying to get their people through and get them qualified and trained properly to do it. And we proved that, people were more motivated when it was gamified, or they found it boring. And again, I know this is a different context about e-learning, but the mechanics you can lift and move to things. So I think that the health and safety element we can talk about next, but learning and the quizzes attached to sort of, and sharing, attached with your Fitbit and those sort of things, they work. They absolutely work.
Just on that, there's a question that's coming here, and I think it kind of relates back a little bit to the kind of some of the examples you were doing around the scouts. But someone's asked, what's the general attitude with the uptake for something like this? And obviously appreciating the scout and guide and references, but as adults in a work environment, how does it resonate?
Yeah, I think it can be as easy as hit or miss. I really do. The clients I've dealt with, they either buy this into their culture and it's accepted by the workforce and understood because it's been communicated the right way, and maybe where they are on their safety curve is a certain point for that site or that business, and it gets senior management backing. If it hasn't got senior management backing, these things don't work. Gamification can't be done in a pocket. It just can't. It needs, your senior manager needs to understand it. They need to commit it to it. You need to budget it and resource it. You need to educate your workforce. It's not Big Brother watching anybody. It's making people get safer, and maybe also being a little bit more enjoyable and more motivated, engaged. So I think if you've got I worked at one site, I won't mention who, many, many years ago. It was a chemical factory, probably 30 years ago. The unions were really strong. They wouldn't have had a chance doing this gamification. They just would not have done it. They'd have seen it as, it's something that's not my job. So that's the culture that side. Yeah, you go to another site making the same stuff. They've got an enlightened culture. They're really good on their safety curve, and it worked. So it's that silver bullet concept. I think it's a good question. I've not got a perfect answer. I think you have to look into your individual companies right the way down to the personas of people, the culture of the site and the organization, and the management team if they're buying in.
I guess you're talking about the competitive nature of that. There's some sectors and industries that immediately spring to mind where that culture is already there, that competitive nature of culture of the types of people that work in that organization. So it kind of fits in really nicely, but then perhaps it wouldn't. You look at some organizations and you think, if we try and instigate like a competitive nature amongst our workforce here, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it has to do with a little bit on, as you say, more modern type organizations that, have not been doing the same thing for 50 or 100 years at the same site. Their culture can be a little bit more outwardly looking. Whereas, my example with the unions, their workforce had worked there each man and woman had worked there for 30 years. That's a difficult culture to try and bring along. Whereas other people who've got a relatively mobile workforce, or their thing they're doing, as you say, encourages it anyway, it's easier to do. I'm not suggesting everyone goes away and gamifies everything from this call, but I do think it's something you should look into. I think particularly if I just jump onto how you could maybe use it in practice for the last sort of 15 to 20 minutes. So obviously I I call it safe systems of work, and forgive me for that. I broadly think anything to me under the QSHE or the SHE banner, you could actually identify tasks, activities, processes that are elements of your safe systems of work, and you choose which one to actually put the gamification in. So whether it's just simple activity or a full process or a department or a function, you pick the gamification elements you want to use. I would just go with simple point scoring and some type of either notification or shared dashboards for it, and then just track the motivation and the engagement. So don't pick something it's impossible to task or track. If you're going to pick something that's all paper-based or all, takes you 4 weeks to work out whether it's actually working or in place, that's not the right thing to choose. And I think if I go through a quick sort of self-help next about maybe the things we should look at, I think if you're going to do this, select the right focus. I say behavior, because that's the key thing you want to do. You're trying to affect behavior, get people to be safe or get committed or engaged and to close out things, to attend things. So you're trying to change that behavior or encourage that behavior. Like I've got some examples there. Close out of an action. That goes across every type of thing, whether it's an audit, an incident, an investigation, a permit to work, all those that, industrial hygiene. It goes across them all just to get people to close out actions or increase reporting numbers. And I know I've had many discussions over the years about people who don't like this concept. It does work in some industries. The more and more you get reported, you're at the bottom of that triangle. It does affect things. Toolbox talk is a key one, particularly construction. I know a lot of our clients talk to me about this, about toolbox talk attendance, or even toolbox talk delivery with quality and at the right time. You can gamify those processes. They're quite a good one to gamify that, as if you focus on that, because you could focus on a project or a site or a department and just trial it there. Inspection commitment is a bit.
I guess a pretty critical stage as well, isn't it? Right, to selecting the right focus and scope. That's kind of the real key critical element of this.
I think so, Ian. Yeah, absolutely. I think this is building your gamification on solid foundations. If you pick the wrong behavior that you can't affect, you can't track, that doesn't get buy-in, or makes people more, heaven forbid, at risk, or slightly, takes them off doing their job, you need to be very careful on your focus of the behavior. Start small. We talk to all our clients about this when they ask for things. You can always get more complicated with something. Yeah. You can never take complexity away. You can't do it. But if you start simple, you can quickly get more and more comprehensive. So, your POC or your project, your proof of concept, start small. I think it's very important to take small steps. It really is. And I think it fits straight into Ian. So what we were discussing before, does it work for everybody? You do have to consider your audience, because it won't work for everybody. It might work for everybody in a team or a function or an area, but you've also got to think about, as I showed you before, if I'm using the same screen every day and typing the same thing in, I don't want things telling me stuff to try and motivate me to do it. I'm doing it. It's my job. Whereas if I do that once a week and it's important, you might want to give me some feedback on, well done, Rob, you've done this week's excellent. Next week, another 7 days, you'll get another one done. That's gamifying the process. You mightn't think it is, but it is. So you need to be mindful of your audience. Are they allowed to join the gamification process for starters? But also, is it within their daily routine that doesn't cause problems?
Just so there's a question that's coming in here which kind of relates to that, and about how it would work in a smaller business with fewer employees. The question cites kind of 5 employees, but they provide a service to the public. Would it work in the kind of environment with a smaller audience?
Yeah, I think so. And again, it does depend on your team's morale, and it's not so much morale, but how they work together. If it's fair, I think that's the key thing when it's relatively small groups. If everyone sees it's fair and there's a chance of me, scoring points on the same ratio or being the top or having a chance of being seen as I've achieved the most this week, so if you can sort of make a level playing field of fairness across it, then why not? And I think with a small team, it's a lot easier to communicate it and say, look, we're going to try this. It's a pilot. Let's see if it helps us and get on. And be mindful that no one's left behind, but you'll notice that very quickly in a small team. So I think that could be an ideal one to try it. Maybe even if it's the public, you could get them involved in the service to give you the feedback on it for the gamification. So maybe engage people. I always try to change something into a sales avenue, but it might be sort of a value-added thing that people see that your organisation are prepared to do it.
On a similar note, someone was asking about the recognition, and is badges enough as a recognition, or should it always lead to something larger as a larger reward in the end, do you think?
Yeah, I'm a believer in larger rewards personally. I know I've got clients who hate giving money away, and not because it's commercial, but it's don't attach money to safety. And I understand that. That's a very valid argument. But I do believe in, at the end of a month, the best observer in the organisation gets a meal for two or a box of chocolates. One of our clients does the box of chocolates every month, right? And it's fair across the organisation. It's not always the same person winning it. They've got some rules in there as well to make it fair. But I do think, other than getting a badge or a recognition or well done, you're the best this week, I think, and that's why you've got to get senior managers bought in. You do need backing because it might need resourcing and budget. Me, if I was doing it in a manufacturing type environment or an organisation service provider, I would try to put some more thing than recognition on it. I would, but that's a personal thing. I think that the next one is. I thank you for the question. Sorry, the next one is the mechanics you use. We're getting into now. So you set on the focus. I'm gonna make sure everybody tries to close out their actions within the space of the target date, a week of their target date. So straight away, there's the target. We've got a target date that's already set by another process, so we know if we can hit it or not hit it. It's a simple concept. Attendance to something, that's the trigger. You either attend or you don't attend. It's fair. It's obvious. There's no arguments. Or even continual action. That's a bit more self-motivating. If you continually do this thing regularly over a period of time, that's my trigger. So it's very open, obvious, and fair, the trigger you do. It's not some convoluted rule that you have to work out, did I achieve it or not? It's nice and simple. And it's already been defined by the process. Action tracking is an easy one. When you give somebody an action, you already tell them when. Straight away, there's your trigger. All you need to then talk about is what the mechanics. Simple. Point scoring. And at the end of each month, for however many actions you've closed out on time, you score some points. And whoever gets the most points, or whichever department scores the most points, you could do it that way. So it's not individualized. It's department-based or function-based. You could use a mixture of them to do that. Let me just carry on. Sorry. And then we talked about this before about the pilot. I think it is a key one to think about. What part of the EHS are we going to sort of focus on? Have we already got the triggers built in? My target date example, but you've got to communicate it. It needs to be fair and open and communicated in back. And I think the key one is the monitoring. It's really good if you can have it so if people are drawn into the gamification, they've got the option to say, I enjoyed that, or this is a hindrance to me. Like the Google ads, it's things like that. If you get them on the screen, say, stop sending me them. I'm not interested, and it'll go away for a while. It's the same thing with this. You need a feedback mechanism or a way to monitor, is it working or isn't it working? And who wants to be involved fully and who wants to be involved on a sort of personal notification level. It's that type of thing. I think the survey pre and post is just a normal way to do it, isn't it? If you're going to try something, do some research. We close out actions, within 60% closeout rate in the target date. Let's try and get it to 80. Let's gamify it and see if we can get 60 to 80%. You're quantifying it. So it's not a survey pre and post, but it's the research. You're researching before you do it and after you do it to see if it makes sense and it's worked.
There's a couple of questions here I want to try and tie together a little bit. Have you got any examples of how people could implement or leverage gamification, and any examples of how this can be incorporated into a company that already has a robust safety system without having an impact on what's already in place?
Yeah, I think we're gonna cover that. That's actually what we're going to go to next. Really, it's a good question about the leverage bit. Tell us how then. What are some ways that have worked before for other clients? I think that leads us straight in really to the question. So these are three simple ones and relatively obvious. I've got a lot more to discuss with people if they're interested, because I think the big list we did, when you get past the top obvious 4 or 5 that could work for anybody, when you start getting to the ideas about 7, 8, 9 about auditors and different things like that, it's a smaller audience what they work for. But an observation program, I think, is the simplest and easiest. If you've already got an ongoing observation program, you've already got the framework to do gamification. I think closeout of actions. Nobody on this call, it works for a company who doesn't have a closeout of something. So that's obvious to try and tackle. And then toolbox talks, getting people to attend them. again, not everybody toolbox talks. I know construction, it's very popular, but you could even use them for safety briefs or learning events, which again widens your catchment area for your industry. It doesn't have to just be around construction. I think to just delve a little bit deeper in the last sort of 10 minutes or so, I think observation program, if you've got a planned observation program now, so, you want everyone to do 5 observations a month, maybe it's just the trained observers who do them, fine. You've already got the framework to say, did you do them or didn't you do them? And you can award points. That's simple as it is. You've reached your target, you got 2 points. At the end of the month, we're going to see which observer scored the most points. And we're going to give a prize or a recognition or, that type of thing. You can even do it so that the departments that have been observed, which department has the most positive feedback or gave the most ideas back into the base. So you're not just doing the observer, you maybe you'll be able to do some type of recognition to the departments, not just where never, ever, ever tackle it on you got the lowest score or you got the most at-risk things. Gamification is not about negative reporting. It's about achieving things, pushing for motivation. Negative reporting, you've got processes to do that. Near misses, near hits, unsafe acts, unsafe conditions. You've got processes to do that. You want to do your observations on hitting observations and maybe observing not just safe practices, but best practices that are observed and see who's done them. And I think, you could do this with leaderboards or individual rewards, whether your observers go from a pro to an expert to a master observer. If you built in the culture, what my old company had that level of thing with their observers. You could get a certain rating on how well you were performing but you were a trained observer. It was a proper trained program. And then you can start doing the concept of leaderboards. Not everybody likes leaderboards. I appreciate that. But you could do it by site, as one example is there. How many this site have raised? How many did it before? How many weeks at number 1? It's just a very simple way to say, wow, look, on an observation table, Dubai up there is really, really good. Whereas Kate Orange is our best observer this week. Well done. You've hit professional status.
Are there any examples or things that you need to consider when implementing within the observation programs?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Like all observation programs, you need to be mindful of the concept of a desktop observation, that somebody does them all from their desk on a Friday afternoon of their own area. But you can engineer them not to do that. So I think, and also missing areas out. If you're always going around areas that maybe aren't mostly at risk or easy to observe or whatever, you need to be mindful that the observation program covers everywhere on a fair and even basis. Not putting people at risk going into dangerous areas, but putting the right people to go observe areas. I think it needs to be that fair and observation. And you can do this by doing daily observation rates. So it's not everything on a Friday from your desktop. You track the ones from a mobile device. So, because in our system, you can do that. You can say which observations have come from a mobile and work out every day how we're getting observations done across the board fairly. So, I do think you do need to be mindful when you do this about the slightly playing the system, as they say, to some degree. I think there is an element of that. And I think action closeout is a key one for me. It doesn't matter whether it's attached to a non-conformance, a quality issue, an incident, a committee from safety have told you to do something. You get closeout things to do, and they all have a target date, and you all know if you achieved that, you didn't achieve that. So you've already got that mechanics. You've probably already got that data. All you have to think about is what gaming mechanics to put around it and what recognition or achievement you want to send at the end. And I think we looked at things of when you log in, there's a very personalized one that doesn't go anywhere else. This one's telling me, Rob, well done. You've sold so many points for doing this today, and you're nearly there with achieving your 100% action closeout rate, just to let me know. There's nothing negative if I don't achieve this, but the recognition is there to try and draw me to get that achieved, or a weekly reminder. It doesn't just say, as ours does now, you've got 6 of these open, 4 of these open. It actually says, and by the way, your department is the best at doing this, or you as an individual have nearly achieved this if you get these done this week. It's all gamification. It's just the way the notifications are wrapped up.
Do you think there's a danger of focusing on speed of closeout to get it done, to score points?
Yeah, I do. It's a big danger. Yeah, it really is a big danger in gamification. You need to make sure you're not just fueling speed of closeout. Yeah, and that can only be achieved by the verification element of that closeout. Because if it's closed out now, there should be a verification step to check that, and that should be mindful of checking the speed hasn't affected it. You've got to be careful. You're writing the gamification doesn't just focus on closeout speed. You need to be mindful of what you're targeting, because obviously, and also target dates move. You need to be mindful of what effect that has. Some target dates could move, and it's not the individual's person's fault. So you need to think about that in the rules and the fairness, or make it really simple. And also add, was it useful? I think that's a key thing. That feedback loop with the verification to make sure you're not fueling just closeout without any real value in it. You're losing the quality because people are just doing things quickly. I think that is a big thing. And I think a lot of that is based on the notification. This screen's not aimed at that, but this notification is very personal to me. It tells me how I'm doing on my action closeouts, how am I doing my audit program, how am I doing my observations, or how my department's doing if I'm a manager. So my individual people mightn't see this data. It might be aimed at the managers or the supervisors. So the gamification is aimed at them, maybe not with a reward to start with, just with a motivation and commitment thing. Maybe this is data they don't see now, and you're just gamifying it to give the visibility of them. I think that the recognition is a key thing, and that can come in many formats. Like you say, it could be a box of chocolates, could be a book token, could be your name in the company newsletter. It could be, just something to say, well done. Every time you log on, you've achieved this level. I think there are a mixture of things you can look at.
There's a couple of questions. Again, we've got a couple of minutes left, so I want to try and tie a couple of them together. And I think we're going to come on to risks in a little minute. But are there any risks with implementing or employing gamification? And have you kind of noticed any age gap in the take-up of this? Do younger people have a better take-up than older staff?
Yeah, I think that's a key one. I have to say yes, and it's also the industry, not the industry itself, but the length of, like I was saying, one factory I worked at, there was a 50-year club, which meant you'd worked at the company for 50 years, and there was people in that club. Most people were in the 25-year club. I think that's difficult to get people engaged in these things when they've done the same thing for 25 years. To change their behaviours and affect them with some new things is difficult. Whereas you've got lots of new starters. Look, my daughter will be attracted to anything on her iPad if it's gamified. Now, I know they're usually games as well, but even schools do it now. The school online lessons are all gamified to draw people to. My daughter, Robux, Minecraft, they're all in there to gamify. So it is a young thing. I do agree, but those young people turn into mature people and older people very, very quickly. So very soon that culture will be through all our safe systems of work. And I think it is a great question to ask about the age of people, because I think there is a difference, but it's moving quickly. It really is moving quickly. And I think the risk, just to finish on the risk, because I think we're nearly done. There are risks with this. It needs to be understood. You need to make it clear that it's not a game. You're not trivializing anything. You're not making things less secure or safe. It's about the engagement and the commitment. That's what it's all about. And also be clear. Crystal clear, start small. This is what we're doing. Get senior management back in, and whether the rewards or scoring, make sure it's visible and clear. I think if you get that right, it really reduces the risks. Yeah, the one you mentioned before, Ian, about speed, it's another risk. Yeah. You're not fueling the wrong behaviour change. That's a key one. And I think this is the overall thing about the safe systems of work. Choose the right one. Pick the element of gamification and monitor whether it's changing that behaviour. And this is just a summary, really, and before we finish. It is mainstream. I'm talking about Robux on my daughter, but it's through everything now with your Fitbit and all those online gaming things, right the way through litter picking and tea picking. It doesn't work everywhere. You have to be mindful of your culture, the age group, the tasks people are doing, but it does reduce risks to change people's behaviour, because it changes people's behaviour. It does. It really does. A little bit speeded up at the end there, Ian, but thank you for the time. Thank you
perfect.
for coming.
I'm going to squeeze in one very quick question, just a couple of, if you've got a quick couple of word answers. Someone should start if there's any further reading or any textbooks you can recommend on the subject.
Yeah, I can share that. I did a fair bit of research, so I can make them available. If you go through Ian or me on LinkedIn, Rob Leech, I'm happy to share the research you did. Like I say, the majority of it is very much from a gaming world, but it does take it out of the gaming world and talk about sort of normal life, as it were, and how it can work.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. So thank you very much for joining us and engaging with this session. If you missed any of it for any reason or any of the content from the first 2 days, like I said at the start, all of the content is available, as well as the on-demand sessions from the co-located shows on the platform until the end of July. Rob, huge thank you to you. Really enjoyable chat with you as always. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, and to the sponsors, EcoOnline. If you want to find out more, please do check out their booth and request a meeting on the platform. I'm going to be back at 2 o'clock tomorrow for another live webinar looking at wellbeing considerations as we return to the new normal. In the meantime, don't forget to check out the meetings platform and browse some of the exhibitor booths. Thank you very much for your time, and see you again tomorrow. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Ian.